Kyle Delaney here, bringing you the latest edition of my video blog. And in this installment, I'd like to break down and predict the upcoming fight between Anthony "Rumble" Johnson and Vitor "the Phenom" Belfort at UFC 142 in Rio. Now, here's the thing about this, is that this is not the main event. At UFC 142, we're going to see Aldo versus Mendes, but this is going to be the more entertaining fight. This is going to be the fireworks fight of that card. Now, there's a couple other good fights on this card, but Rumble Johnson and Vitor Belfort, based on their skills and everything that they bring to the table, these are two guys with devastating knockout power and pretty good ground games. So we are going to see an epic battle, whether it's standing up or on the ground. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to break down this fight. I'm going to break down the fighters, then I'm going to do my prediction. So Anthony Johnson, for a guy who is only 27 years old, is still evolving as a fighter, but he has unlimited potential in this sport. Why? Because he has unbelievable athleticism. He is very fast. He has a ridiculous frame. Here's the thing about Anthony Johnson, is that he's fought at welterweight and he's looked like a middleweight. He's now fighting at middleweight. He's going to look like a light heavyweight. His frame is ridiculous. The guy's size, his frame, is something that is very rare in this sport. So Anthony Johnson is going to look like an absolute monster come Saturday at UFC 142. On top of all of that, between his speed, his athleticism, his size, he has unbelievable knockout power as well. Anthony Johnson has 7 knockouts in his career, and his career is not a very long career, but at the same time, Anthony Johnson is only continuing to get better. Anthony Johnson's striking is more dynamic and more versatile than Vitor Belfort. Anthony Johnson uses his kicks, he uses his hands, he uses the clinch. The thing is if once he lost to Josh Koscheck, and that's not saying that his striking wasn't good before, but you've noticed a very big change in Anthony Johnson since his loss to Josh Koscheck. The Dan Hardy fight, the Charlie Brenneman fight, his stand-up, even though the Dan Hardy fight was not that entertaining and he did lay on him and use his superior wrestling ability, when they were standing up, Anthony Johnson did outstrike Dan Hardy. Those leg kicks were very hard for Dan Hardy to deal with, and then the Charlie Brenneman fight, he pulls off that unbelievable leg kick to the face. Now, whether Brenneman was out or not, that fight would have not gone the distance anyway. Rumble Johnson would have found some sort of opening. Now, his striking is more dynamic, more versatile. He possesses knockout power, 7 knockouts. Also, in regards to Anthony Johnson, he is a superior wrestler. He's a very good wrestler. We've seen this in plenty of fights. He is able to control his opponents on the ground. He is a very decorated high school wrestler, very decorated college wrestler. And with his size and with his strength, he is able to 1, stop takedown attempts, and 2, control opponents on the ground, and it also makes him very serviceable in the clinch. The one thing, though, in regards to Anthony Johnson's ground game is simply that he does not have the jiu-jitsu advantage at all. He has been submitted quite a few times in his career, almost all of them coming by rear naked choke. He is nowhere near the ability of Vitor Belfort when it comes to rolling on the ground, but maybe his wrestling will be able to prevail in this. But in this fight, we're going to see simply wrestling versus Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu if it goes on the ground. Which is better, very polished wrestling or very polished and refined Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? But Anthony Johnson does have a hole in his game. It's not his wrestling on the ground, but it's his ability to avoid submission attempts. And I'll be interested to see if these guys want to keep this fight standing. And, I'll be interested to see if Vitor Belfort will want to take this fight to the ground. So what we have with Anthony Johnson, very deadly stand-up, great frame, unbelievable athleticism, good speed, good knockout power, more versatile striking, and a good ground game with wrestling. So that's what I have for Anthony Johnson. In regards to Vitor Belfort is one of the best boxers in MMA. His hand speed is absolutely unbelievable. Now, I'm not saying his hand speed is the same that it was when he first came into the UFC. He's getting older, but he still has very refined, crisp boxing, very technical boxing. He can get in a boxing match with you, but I'll give this. This one's very tough on who has the knockout advantage, the knockout power advantage in this one. Vitor Belfort has 14 knockouts in his career, which is very impressive. He has a longer list of fights in his career than Anthony Johnson. Both of these guys, I'm going to call the knockout power in this fight a wash. It's going to be even, is that both guys possess unbelievable knockout power, but Vitor Belfort's main purpose, just like Anthony Johnson's main purpose, is to knock you out. The thing is, he's not as versatile as Anthony Johnson, but he has more refined striking. His hands are very refined. They're very effective compared to Anthony Johnson's versatile striking. I'll take the refined boxing over the versatile striking that's still evolving. The thing is that Vitor Belfort's striking has evolved already, and it only continues to get better. So you could say it's evolving, but I'd say it's evolved, and it's already crisp and exceptional already. But I'll take that over a versatile stand-up game that is still evolving. So we know what to expect from Vitor Belfort. Unbelievable hand speed, and he steps forward in the pocket, and he goes for the finish. He throws barrages of punches, and he tries to finish fights. Plain and simple, that's what he does. Vitor Belfort, he's serviceable in the clinch. In this one, I will not give him the advantage over an elite wrestler. Here's where it becomes interesting, though. Vitor Belfort's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but the guy in his past, I mean, we never really get to see his jiu-jitsu simply because he likes to keep the fight standing. He knows how elite of a striker he is. But against Anthony Johnson, it's going to be very interesting to see is that Anthony Johnson's also a great striker as well, and he does have a hole in his submission game. He's not that good at defending submissions. So it'll be interesting to see if Vitor Belfort wants to bring this one to the ground and try and work in a submission. Vitor Belfort has a huge submission advantage this one. He's a true black belt. Before he fell in love with his hands, he was known as a feared Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guy. Black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is more than capable of submitting Anthony Johnson in this fight. I actually think that's where Vitor Belfort will be most successful. And that's not saying his stand-up game is not there, but I think if you're going to fight this fight smart, you are going to get Anthony Johnson. If you could get Anthony Johnson to the ground, you try and work in a submission. If it's on your back or if it's on top in guard. So that's what I think for Vitor Belfort. Now, strengths and weaknesses for both guys. Strengths for Anthony Johnson, his size, his athleticism, his speed, his power. In regards to weaknesses, though, weaknesses simply is that he does not have the submission game that Vitor Belfort has. He does not have the submission defense that Vitor Belfort has. And also in regards to Anthony Johnson, he has not fought talent that Vitor Belfort has. He has not fought a fighter like Vitor Belfort with his talent level. One more strength for Anthony Johnson. I give Anthony Johnson the chin advantage in this one. I know that's very tough to say, seeing Vitor Belfort has a battle-tested chin, but he's never been knocked out cold before, Anthony Johnson. He's never been knocked out cold. The only time really was TKO'd was simply that he had an eye poke and he couldn't continue throughout the fight. That was the time he's been knocked out, but he's never been knocked out cold. Vitor Belfort has been knocked out cold, and it's been by some exceptional fighters like Anderson Silva and the Coutures, but Anthony Johnson has the chin advantage in this one. In regards to Vitor Belfort's strengths, he has more refined striking. He has more, not as dynamic strike, but he has a more refined stand-up game, more refined ground game in his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He has better submission. And disadvantage, I'd say his chin is weaker than Anthony Johnson. That's saying something, seeing Vitor Belfort has not been knocked out many times, but he has been knocked out before. So that's what I have for the strengths and weaknesses. In regards to the prediction, how this one goes down, we're going to see a little bit of everything. We're going to see stand-up. We're going to see ground game. Whether it's Johnson on top of Belfort or Belfort on top of Johnson, it'll be interesting to see. Personally, I think Anthony Johnson will be more successful standing up, even though Vitor Belfort's a very good stand-up striker. I see these two going back and forth, stand-up strikes, people being rocked. Ground, we're going to see submission attempts. We're going to see ground and pound. But where I see this one happening, I see if Anthony Johnson wants to take notes, him being the more dynamic striker, and I'm not comparing him to Anderson Silva, okay? Anthony Johnson is nowhere near the striker that Anderson Silva is, but if we are looking at how versatile he is, Vitor Belfort does keep his hands down sometimes, and if he has taken notes from the Anderson Silva fight, he'll let the leg kicks go. I see Anthony Johnson catching Vitor Belfort with a leg kick and jumping all over him, getting the TKO. And this will be Anthony Johnson's big welcoming to the middleweight division and taking that next step forward in his career. And Vitor Belfort will still land on his feet. I do not see him getting back to the championship in the middleweight division. He'll still be a good gatekeeper in the division and still a legend and a Hall of Famer of the sport. So I'll take Anthony Johnson over Vitor Belfort via TKO at UFC 142 in Rio. And that's what I have for this prediction. I'll see everybody later. I'm out of here.